Valley MPO Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Advisory Committee to order. Before we start, I'd like to have a moment of silence and commemorate the bicyclists that we lost earlier this month. And our first order of business is approval.
Mr. Chair, could we have,
Oh, yeah, let's call let's just go down the line and introduce everybody and where you're from. Start at the end over here.
Vanessa Morales Romero, City of Las Cruces.
Albert Casillas, Doña County.
Ashley Curry, representative for the town of Mesilla, citizen representative for the town of Mesilla.
Jim Wilcox, cyclist representative.
Andrew Guerra, NMDOT.
Selena Costa, NMSU.
And George Pearson, City of Las Cruces representative. Thank you for reminding me to do that. Approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda?
no, Mr. Chair.
So there was a tip on the preliminary one. Wasn't necessary?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Andrew Ray for the record. We had initially been told by both NMDOT and by Roadrunner Transit that they had pending tip amendments for this evening's meeting, but then on further review, NMDOT determined that they needed to handle their amendments administratively as admin modifications, and then Roadrunner Transit, I guess the timing of the funding was such that they did not need to come with a tip amendment for this cycle.
Okay. So I'll hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Jim Wilcox, second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Our next order of business is election of officers. So I guess I'll turn it over to staff to run this election for the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We usually do vice chair first, actually. Just a brief explanation. There's no particular guiding precedent on the BPAC. Any member of the BPAC can serve as chair and vice chair. So we'll go ahead and start with nominations for vice chair for calendar year 2025.
Happy to continue. So I'll nominate Ashley Curry as vice chair.
We'll need a second.
Albert Casillas, I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved in second. All in favor of Ms. Ashley Curry serving as vice chair for calendar year 2025, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Ms. Curry will be vice chair for calendar year 2025. I'll open the floor for nominations for the office of chair of the BPAC for calendar year 2025.
This is Ashley Curry, and I nominate George Pearson for position of chair.
We'll need a second.
Andrew Guerra, second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of Mr. George Pearson serving as chair of the BPAC for calendar year 2025, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. So congratulations, Mr. Chair and Ms. Vice Chair. I'll turn the meeting back over to Mr. Pearson.
Okay, so now we are at approval of the minutes for November 19th. I guess with our open meeting thing, representative here, we should appropriately ask for a motion first and then
That
have
is correct,
discussion.
Mr. Chair. We should do that.
So I'll ask for a motion to approve minutes of November 19th.
This is Jim Wilcox. I motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Albert Casillas, I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're on to public comment. Any member from the public wish to comment at this point? Seeing none, we'll move on to discussion items.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would at this time like to introduce Mr. Sergio Estrada from Kemp Smith, who serves as the MPO attorney, and he will be giving the Open Meetings Act presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. Chair, committee members, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you all this evening. And I'm Sergio Estrada. I'm a partner at the Kemp Smith Law Firm. I'm here with my partner, Elisa Samaniego, who helped in preparing this presentation and reviewing it for accuracy. I was here a year ago with another partner to present this same presentation, so it's funny how time flies. But I won't take up too much of your time. Today we're going to discuss the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. And the reason we're going to cover the New Mexico Open Meetings Act is because you have to comply with the New Mexico Meetings Act, Open Meetings Act. The first slide, if we can change the slide, please, defines the purpose of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act. And in part, it states as follows: in recognition of the fact that a representative government is dependent upon an informed electorate, it is declared to be public policy of this state that all persons are entitled to the greatest possible information regarding the affairs of government and the official acts of those officers and employees who represent them. This is of importance to you all because if there is ever a legal challenge or judicial opinion that is asked to interpret a provision of the Open Meetings Act, or OMA, as I will refer to it throughout the presentation, if there is any ambiguity or any open-endedness as to what a particular provision means, the courts look to what the purpose of the law or the statute is. And so I have highlighted in my own notes the fact that it is the policy of this state that all persons are entitled to the greatest possible information regarding the affairs of government. And therefore, any ambiguity would be resolved in favor of complying with the purpose and spirit of the law. Furthermore, I want to share with you all that the New Mexico Attorney General's Office has published a compliance guide, an Open Meetings Act compliance guide. It was last updated back in 2015. But in that document, the New Mexico AG states and informs all governmental entities that doubt as to the proper course of action should always be resolved in favor of openness whenever possible. So again, that directive from the New Mexico AG's office is in keeping with the stated purpose of the statute. We can move on to the next slide, please. If there is ever a question about whether or not a governmental body has violated OMA, the New Mexico AG's office can look into it. The district attorney in the county where the alleged violation occurred can look into it. But additionally, any member of the public can petition a district court for enforcement of the provisions of the Open Meetings Act. And if an individual were to be successful in bringing an action in a court of law, they could be entitled to attorney's fees. So just something for you all to keep in mind. An open meeting is so the next obvious question is when is when are the provisions of the Open Meetings Act triggered? Well, they are triggered when, and I actually skipped a slide, all meetings of a quorum of members of any board, commission, administrative, adjudicatory body, or other policy-making body are declared to be public meetings that must be open to the public.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can you go back to the slide you said you just missed?
Yes. The slide that I was looking at, and I jumped ahead in my own notes, is enforcement, civil and criminal. We can go to that slide, please. That's it right there, Commissioner. And as that slide states, there is a presumption that any and all actions taken by a government body were taken in accordance with OMA, unless someone raises a possible violation. And before they can pursue legal action, either in court or by submitting a complaint to the AG's office, they are required to give notice to the governing body and provide the governing body of the governmental entity an opportunity to address the issue. Does that answer any questions you may have? Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. And my apologies. So I did skip the other slide, and we could go back to what does OMA require. Well, OMA applies when there's a quorum of the governing body or of the committee, such as this. If there's ever a quorum of members of this committee here or elsewhere, the provisions of the Open Meetings Act are potentially at play. And now we can move on to the slide that's entitled Beware of Rolling Quorums. This is in the presentation because, in my experience, this is where some entities tend to get in trouble sometimes. It's either not having properly posted an item on the agenda or discussing business of the entity outside of a public meeting. And rolling quorums, they can happen intentionally or by accident. So as the slide states, the OMA requirement for open public meetings applies to any discussion of public business among a quorum of a public body's members. A quorum may exist when the members are not physically present together at the same time and place. For example, if 3 members of a 5-member board discuss public business in a series of phone calls or emails, the discussion is a meeting of a quorum of a public body. And rolling quorums are a violation of OMA because they are not properly noticed public meetings. As such, I'm sure that there are situations or instances when you receive emails from perhaps MPO staff, but you've all been directed to or informed that you're not to reply to them or reply to all, where everyone can kind of engage in a communication via email of public business. That would be a rolling quorum. Or, I've seen situations where bodies get in trouble where they think, well, let's have 2 members discuss the issue now, and then one leaves and the other will come in. But, through that process, we will arrive at a consensus of what we'd like to do. That's a rolling quorum. And again, something you want to steer clear of. My recommendation is there's nothing that prohibits you from discussing public business or MPO, BPAC business with another member of the committee or 2 other members. But if you ever feel like what you're doing is taking information from 2 members and then passing it on to others to try and gather, what would be a consensus at a public meeting, then you're straying too far. And you should just wait until the meeting occurs and discuss it here. And the last time I saw this become an issue was with the city of El Paso. I used to be a city attorney there, and they were investigated. It's in the news. And what was allegedly happening is they were having a meeting and having members come in and out while discussing the same issue. Don't do that. Again, wait for the publicly posted meeting to occur and discuss it here in front of the public and after it's been noticed. Any questions on rolling quorums or? Perfect. Can we go on to the next slide, please? So as I mentioned earlier, the other issue where entities tend to get in trouble, if you will, is if they don't properly notice an item. So the OMA has certain notice requirements, and some of them are as follows. Meeting notices must include an agenda containing a list of specific items of business to be discussed or transacted at the meeting, or information should be provided on how the public may obtain a copy of such an agenda. Something that I would like to also tell you is courts have interpreted OMA as a statute that requires substantial compliance, not necessarily strict compliance, which is good for you all to know, just in case there's ever, a violation comes up, and I as legal counsel will guide you on how to resolve it. But courts have repeatedly said as long as you comply substantially with the spirit of the statute and the law, you are likely to not be in violation of the statute if you are ever to be investigated. But with regards to notice requirements, what they have said is they've established a reasonable specificity rule. As long as you, in your agenda, describe the item that you're going to discuss, the business that you're going to take with reasonable specificity, you should be fine. There is no magic language that you are required to use. My test is always, if someone that has no knowledge about BPAC or the MPO, if they were to grab or come across a copy of our agenda, would they know what's going to happen or at least be discussed? And if the answer is yes, you have passed the test. If the answer is no, then maybe we need to go back and revise the agenda item a little bit. The way the courts have phrased it is the notice must provide fair notice to the public, again, with reasonable specificity of the matters to be discussed. A court of law has never interpreted reasonable specificity within the context of the Open Meetings Act, but they have done so in the context of the Public Records Act, which is very similar to this act. And in that situation, the courts have said that reasonable can be defined as an objective under the circumstance approach that involves considering all the applicable facts and circumstances, meaning do your best, try and give people as much reasonable notice of what you're going to discuss, and you should be fine. There is no black letter law. I will tell you that very recently, as a matter of fact, just earlier this month, the New Mexico AG's office issued an opinion in regards to the New Mexico Ethics Commission, where they were going to discuss the possibility of filing a suit against an employee of sorts, but the way that was phrased in their agenda was limited personnel matters. That was it. The AG's office determined that wasn't sufficient because it doesn't tell you anything about whom they're discussing or what action, if any, they're going to take. I think I could have guessed that that's how they would have ruled on such a broad, ambiguous description of limited personnel matters only. Now, also recently, a municipality or a village in New Mexico was in the process of attempting to purchase real estate property, and the way they phrased their agenda was discussion of the purchase, acquisition, or disposal of real property. That was also determined to be insufficient because it didn't provide any notice about where the property was possibly located or what kind of property they were looking into purchasing or the purpose behind the purchase. There are other requirements that come along with the notice requirements, such as the 72-hour posting notice that your staff complies with. And there are some exceptions to the notice requirements in the events of emergencies, but I'll leave those in the presentation. I don't think we need to cover those today. If we can move on to the next slide. The Open Meetings Act also requires, that minutes be kept at the meetings. It provides some minimum standards for what the minutes must include, the date, time, and place of the meeting, the names of members who were in attendance and absent, and most importantly, of equal importance, the substance of the proposals considered and a record of what the decisions were made, of the decisions that were made. We can move on to the next slide, please.
I have a question.
Sure.
We do currently publish our unapproved minutes. Is there any risk in that, or it doesn't say unapproved, it just says minutes?
I don't think there's any risk in that. Of course, they're unapproved because they're the backup for your next meeting where you'll review them and approve them. No, that seems to be the standard practice.
Great, okay, great.
I think if anyone ever raises any source of confusion, you could add draft to them, in the future, but you don't have to.
Okay, so you're saying that it might help clarify that it's a draft, and so people might not take it at its face value.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
The next slide deals with remote participation. It's allowed. OMA allows it, but in a way discourages it as well. Says, if otherwise allowed by law or rule of the public body, meaning if your own bylaws don't allow it, then you can't do it. A member of a public body may participate in a meeting of the public by means of conference, telephone, or other similar communication equipment when it is otherwise difficult or impossible for the member to attend the meeting in person. That's why I say it allows it, but only under circumstances where it is otherwise difficult or impossible for the member to attend the meeting in person. And of course, you have to have the technology that allows for members of the public to hear you when you are speaking, and as well as your fellow board members. And like the slide says, it is discouraged. Thus, in all cases where it is possible, members of a public body should attend meetings in person, and participation by telephone should occur only when circumstances beyond the member's control would make attendance in person extremely burdensome.
Can I ask a question
Sure.
about that? The current bylaws for the policy board restricts remote access to only one voting member. Is that something that's likely to change?
I don't think that's likely to change because and the reason I say that is I haven't been informed of a desire to change that, and that how remote participation occurs can be controlled by the internal policies of the governing entity. The law doesn't require that it be possible. It just makes it possible if not prohibited by other rules, such as bylaws.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Strada, excuse me for the interruption. This is Andrew Ray for the record. The limitation to one policy board member is specific to this MPO. That's not been specifically handed down as guidance. The rationale behind it, though, is while we do want to offer an opportunity in case of an emergency situation for someone who otherwise would be able to participate, who if a digital option is made available, we want to make that available. However, we also run into the problem of, well, where do we draw the line too? Because, well, if two, well, then why not three? Why not four? And the stance of MPO staff has always historically been we want to reinforce the caveat in the Open Meetings Act about limiting remote participation to the extent possible. So we have historically always just rather not wanted to open that can of worms about, well, what arbitrary number is going to be okay? So we just limit it to one. I will say that we are almost certainly going to be doing some bylaws revision work this year after or in response to the transition. Our bylaws are being rendered obsolete in a number of respects, so that will require updating. And there's also going to be the opportunity for other review of other aspects of the document. So there's nothing specific. Staff is almost certainly still going to argue in favor of limiting the remote participation, but we'll just have to see what comes out of those conversations.
Right, because the policy board has a requirement of one member from each entity to be able to attend, I could foresee where there might be difficulties where you need to have more than one voting member.
We, in fact, have a specific hierarchy of needs, I guess I'll say it, in the bylaws, where we say if we have multiple members who want to participate virtually, the seat goes to the one that will help us get quorum, and we have had that happen where we were only able to make quorum and have the meeting because a member participated digitally. So we have had it happen. That has come into play.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there you go. And I will add to that it's my experience that most bodies want to discourage remote participation.
Well, the law says
And the law
difficult
here
or impossible.
says it, right? So it says it's possible, but when difficult or almost impossible to appear in person.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Jim Wilcox for the record. Mr. Ray, when you say we can do one, but we don't want to do two because then we would do three, are you arguing a slippery slope?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, effectively, yes.
Okay. Then why do we do one? If we do one, couldn't it mean we could do two?
Mr. Wilcox, that is a fair point, but again, the stance of the policy board has always been that the option needs to be there in at least some capacity. And it has been used, and it has been used to the benefit of the MPO in the past, but we don't want the situation where we have like a majority of any one of our boards or committees just disembodied voices speaking through the ether and not able to be there, and because we do have periodically very controversial issues that come before us, and we don't want a situation where members of the public who may feel strongly about a particular issue are not able to actually have a direct conversation with the policymakers that get to make those decisions.
And I can see the argument for the extreme of that. I just want to go on the record that I've looked at slippery slope before. That's generally conceived as a logical fallacy, but I'll accept the situation where you're trying to keep it down to one, and I understand that.
All righty. So any other questions on remote participation? I will add, and you know, just one last thing on this issue. Part of the reason I believe the law goes out of its way to discourage remote participation is it's in a way contrary to the purpose and spirit of the law, which is that all government actions and discussions should happen in an open meeting where the public can come and hear and listen to you all and know who's taking what positions on certain issues. So there is some tie there to the spirit and purpose of the law. If we can move on to the next slide,
Okay, I
please.
guess I have one more question or comment. So this is mostly geared towards the policy board members, but what about presenters? Is there any opinion about allowing presenters to access the meeting remotely?
The law doesn't specifically single out presenters, so I assume it's, you know, permissible. And again, would be dictated much more by what the internal policies and practices of that entity are rather than what the law says. I will say that if a presenter appears remotely, they have to be able, just like any other board member, to be heard, viewed, not only by the board members, but by the members of the public.
Right. Because this board deals with NMDOT, and so they're in
Right.
Santa Fe a lot of times.
Yes.
So to have that access remotely could be important.
Is important, yes. And it's definitely permissible under the statute. So unless the bylaws have changed since last year when I was here, we were also asked to kind of cover attendance as part of our presentation. And attendance remains the same. This slide doesn't pertain to this body. If we can move on to the next slide, please. The BPAC, attendance is required at all committee meetings. If a committee member is absent for more than 3 meetings in a calendar year, that member should lose their voting privileges or may be removed from the policy board per the provisions of the section that is referenced there. And then, of course, this board also allows the use of proxies for attendance, but that's limited as well to 3 times per calendar year. That is actually, in my opinion and experience, pretty flexible compared to what some other entities do. But that is, kind of a very brief overview of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act and your attendance policies. At the end of the day, comply. It's easy to comply with the Open Meetings Act. Your staff is going to post the notices, and they're going to, consult with the chair or the vice chair, make sure that they go on the website and wherever they need to go within the required time. And then the business can be discussed here in an open meeting. And there will be circumstances where maybe a closed session is needed, but those are rare, especially for BPAC, I would say. And as long as you discuss the business here, you will be okay. And lastly, violating OMA is a class, it's a low-level misdemeanor with a $500 fine. But again, you don't want to violate it. You don't need to violate it. It's easy to comply. If you're ever in doubt, reach out to Andrew and he'll let me know if, he'll determine whether or not I need to come in and provide some additional guidance. But if you don't have access to Andrew or me, always act in favor of, transparency and of withholding, or delaying any discussion on any issues until you're here in a publicly posted meeting. Any questions or concerns?
So I have maybe something picky about your slide here. It says, or may be removed from the policy board. Should that be by the policy board or should it be removed from the BPAC?
Well, that's a good question. That member shall lose their voting right privileges or may be removed from the policy board. Yeah, you're right. It should be from the BPAC, obviously. Yes, sir. I'm
Yeah, I
surprised to
don't-
correct.
If this was copied directly from the bylaws, we need to.
We
make
will
note.
check on that, Mr. Chair. I was just like, oh dear. Well, we'll put that on the list of things that needs updating. Actually, we have the ability to administratively edit typos, and that would fall under this rubric, but we will check and make sure that it is correct in the bylaws.
Excuse me, Jim Wilcox for the record. Could you go back to the quorum slide? You don't have numbers on your slides. I don't remember what slide it was.
I can do it. Oh, okay, perfect.
Okay. I remember you said something before about what you shouldn't talk about. It could be considered a possible subject that could be discussed in the future. Do you still stand by that? That we have to somehow predict if I was to meet somebody else and I start talking about a stop sign, let's say.
Right.
And I think, wow, that could be on the subject, and he might talk to somebody else. So I have to be careful because anything could be later considered a topic for discussion. Is that correct?
That's a discussion we had last year, correct?
Yes.
More or
Yeah.
less.
You still stand by that?
I stand by that to the extent that clearly I'm not asking you or any other board member to predict what will be a future issue of the BPAC, correct? But if you're in a social setting, and remember this also, the other requirement is that there be enough of you all, that there's a quorum or
Sure.
that has to do with business that is likely to come before the BPAC,
Okay.
and whatever, that is very broad, but
Pretty general.
if it's something that may come before the BPAC, you may want to be careful about discussing it
Yeah.
amongst yourselves and running into an issue of a rolling quorum. And so my advice was, if you think it touches with the work of this committee, maybe, have agreed to put it on the agenda of a future meeting so where you can discuss it more comfortably.
Yeah, and I still stand by my concern about impinging on my freedom of
First,
speech.
yes.
Which all of this is kind of
Correct.
balanced by. Can you
Correct.
go to the previous slide to this, please? No. Okay, open meetings are required when? Can you go and look through those and tell us how these apply to us? So are we formulating public policy?
You are.
How is that?
You are. And because as an advisory committee to the policy board, what you're doing, you've been in a way delegated some authority, correct?
Yeah, to advise.
To advise and to consider issues that, if not considered by you all, would be considered directly by the policy board.
Sure.
And recommendations come from this board
Yes.
to the policy board. So in doing so, you are formulating public policy. You're not the final decision maker. You're not the you're an advisory committee, but you are, in a way, I would argue, formulating public policy, because recommendations that come from this body will be considered by the policy body, and it'll carry greater weight because it was discussed here by you all.
Okay, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Developing personnel rules, regulations, or ordinances?
I don't think that, a lot of that would happen here, no.
Discussion of public business. I think I agree
Of
with that
course.
one.
Yeah, you can agree with that.
Taking any action with the authority of the board.
Well, none,
Yeah,
right? But I will tell you that there have been instances in New Mexico where advisory bodies, it's clearly an advisory body. The bylaws are set up to where it's just delegated advisory authority, have taken actions,
Based on that advisory.
well, yes, have kind of strayed from their authority and have created other issues. And it all comes back to, well, they took an action that was beyond their authority. So while I would say that this board takes action in the form of its motions and resolutions and advice to the policy board, you don't take action in the way that the policy board does.
Well, that's very interesting. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions? Okay,
Yes,
well,
my only other comment is to remember that the bylaws for this committee mandate that we follow this.
yes, absolutely. Well, and right before I leave, the act also mandates it as well, in a way. It does not say that it's applicable only to the policy board, but any committee of where public business will be discussed is likely to be subject to the Open Meetings Act. And I will stand, I think I made this comment last year as well. It is my preference that all advisory committees, follow the Open Meetings Act. If there's ever any doubt as to whether or not it applies, follow it, apply it. It's in the best interest of everyone involved. But I think there's also an argument to be made that the statute itself makes itself applicable to advisory committees.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Okay, our next discussion item is 6.2, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Dominic Loya for MPO staff. So we will be talking about the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. So as you can see, the maps are back in the back. These are not final. They are just as we go. We are building them, especially the mobility map. And we'll get into that here in a minute. So just as a reminder, that the MPO does serve as a regional forum, and that is what this is about, planning and decision-making for Central Doña County. We also maintain the eligibility to receive federal transportation funds. As part of maintaining that, we do have to have an MTP. And it does establish the long-range vision and enables project development and completion. With Mobility 2045, we are going to pretty much be updating basically, Mobility MTP 2050, Mobility 2045 was the previous plan, or will be the previous plan, should I say, and in June. We will be maintaining most of the stuff in there. This will be mostly an update just due to 2020 and the fact that things moved a lot slower than everybody thought they were going to after 2020. So most of the stuff you'll see is going to be the same. And basically, this one is to serve all transportation users by planning, implementing, and maintaining transportation systems that coordinate land use and transportation planning. We are currently holding stakeholder meetings with the jurisdictions, which we have taken forward what we gathered in the first public comment round, which includes input from this body to the stakeholders to see which parts of the public comment they're willing to implement. All public comment will be in the document in one of the appendix. Just so everybody knows, it does not go anywhere. It is there as part of the public record. As I said, stakeholders are now considering the comments from the first round, and we are presenting relevant information to each jurisdiction from the public comment. So what we have left, basically, we're going to do one round of actual public engagement. It will be in April. This is going to be a pretty tight timeline. And then it will come before the policy board, the TAC, or the TAC and the BPAC in order for a policy board approval in June. So these are the goals for it. These are the same goals from 2045. They will stay the same as there have not been any new goals to put out there so far in any federal documentation or anything like that. So, and as I said, the ultimate goal is to develop a well-integrated, well-functioning transportation network that effectively serves the needs of the residents of the MPO area. So, as I said, the timeline right now, we are in stakeholder meetings. We are taking forward all public comment. In April, we will begin public engagement. At the very beginning of April, we're going to do at least 3 public meetings, 2 in the county, 1 within the city of Las Cruces. We will have dates and times of those as they become available. Then we're going to bring this back to BPAC for recommendation in May. Then June to TAC for recommendation, and then policy board adoption in June. And as it said before, MTP 2050 has to be adopted before June 30th of 2020 of this year. So you will see these maps again if you want to look at them on your way out. We will be bringing them back as we build them out. As I said, right now we've only spoken with two entities, which is Doña County and Elephant Butte Irrigation District. So we've gotten some input, which is why you'll see the maps don't have, especially the mobility map doesn't have a lot on it yet. By next time, we should have everybody's input from the town of Mesilla, the city of Las Cruces, as well as NMDOT. And I will now stand for any comments or questions.
So in the public input, do you expect to do what you did similarly to the last time you had public input on this? Farmers markets, and I think you were up at Radium Springs, and I don't recall what else.
Mr. Chair, right now, the plan is to do at least one in the northern part of the county, one in the southern part of the county, and then the farmers market isn't really conducive to the type of public input we're looking for this time. So it will be a place where we can give an actual presentation on it.
Okay.
And it'll be somewhere within the city of Las Cruces, most likely centrally located, but it does depend on what space we can get.
Mr. Chair, also, we, by far and away, during the first round of public engagement, we were most successful with our online presence. We actually got a pretty substantial volume of comments through the online portal, so we are definitely going to replicate, or we're definitely going to make that available as a commenting tool for the public in the second round of public engagement as well, because it was very successful. We got a lot of engagement through the online medium.
Okay, well, I presume you have a couple more presentations on this, so you might emphasize that as part of the presentation.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Any committee members have questions, comments? Thank you. We're on to MPO basics.
And Ms. Katarina Pervingi will be giving this presentation, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the BPAC. This is the MPO basics presentation. So MPO, so metropolitan planning organizations are federally mandated state designated planning agencies in metropolitan areas with a population over 50,000 people. There are a total of 5 MPOs in the state of New Mexico: the El Paso MPO, the Farmington MPO, us, the Mesilla Valley MPO, the Mid-Region MPO, MRMPO, also known as Mr. Cog, and the Santa Fe MPO. The El Paso MPO and the Mid-Region MPO are transportation management areas, also known as TMAs, by virtue of having over 200,000 people in population in their planned areas. So small MPOs such as ourselves are created by joint power agreements, or also known as JPAs, among the member jurisdictions of our area. JPAs specify the terms of intergovernmental cooperation in the MPO and the role of the MPO and the MPO staff in transportation planning for our area. Additionally, JPAs also outline the financial responsibilities of each member of the MPO. MPOs are required to have bylaws to govern their internal operations and procedures. As was mentioned in the previous presentation, bylaws are updated as needed or when a new JPA or with a new JPA. Mesilla Valley MPO bylaws went into effect on January 1st, 2023. They were last revised in September of 2023. NMDOT establishes 3-year cooperative agreements with each MPO. The cooperative agreements establish the terms of the financial grant to each MPO. MPO staff generally interacts with our NMDOT liaison for most issues related to NMDOT or FHWA.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Pervingi?
Yes.
May I ask a quick question? Were they last revised in September 2022 to go into effect in January 1st, 2023?
It was
Ms. Curry, you're correct. That is actually a typo on the slide. We'll make sure and get that corrected.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so every MPO does have required work products, and they're updated different amounts of years. Updated every 5 years, the public participation plan and the MTP, which we're working on the MTP right now. Updated every 3 years is the Title VI plan. Updated every 2 years is the UPWP, the Unified Planning Work Program, and open call for projects for TIP, and TIP is updated quarterly. Updated every year is the annual listing of obligated projects and the APR, the Annual Performance Expenditure Report. The PPP defines how we conduct public involvement activities. The goal of the PPP is to guide the MPO to have a transparent, predictable transportation planning process that is acceptable and equitable to all impacted or interested parties. The PPP must be adopted or updated before we start working on the MTP. The PPP is updated on a 5-year schedule because of that, and because the MTP is also that. So PPP was last updated in 2023. An MPO's Title VI plan establishes MPO compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and all related environmental justice regulations and directives. The Title VI plan serves as an assurance to the U.S. DOT that persons are not excluded from the planning process. Title VI plan also details a complaint process for Title VI violations. The Title VI plan must be updated every 3 years. The Title VI plan will be updated, I guess I
Was updated.
it was updated. We updated it last, so it will be next updated in 2026. The UPWP is a biannual document that outlines transportation planning activities to be conducted by the MPO staff, but those that MPO staff will oversee, as well as those MPO staff will participate in without overseeing. The UPWP must be consistent with the MTP, so they're all connected. The Mesilla Valley MPO, we will adopt the new UPWP in 2026, next year. With the different programs, there are 2 levels. We have federal and state. Federal, the RTP TAP. Under TAP, we have the Walnut Street Improvement Project, Elks Drive Trail Project, Las Cruces Lateral, and the Safe Routes to School Coordinator, and also CMAC. For state, we have Transportation Project Fund. That was the La Llorona Trail Extension, last I remember. The current UPWP went into effect on October 1st of 2024. So the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, is a federally funded and sometimes regionally significant projects within an MPO area. Our completed projects, we have the I-25 Corridor Study, I-25 Lowman Interchange Landscape Beautification. The Elks Drive Trail was just completed. Current ongoing projects are the US 70 maintenance, US 70 Phase 5, that would be around North Main, and the University Avenue multimodal project. So future projects, the Roadrunner Transit Maintenance and Operations Center, it is still in the process of being completed. Dripping Springs roadway improvements. There's a US 70 rehabilitation, and it's their next phase that they're moving on to. Projects in the 5 years and over, in the further future. Arrowhead Interchange, the I-10 bridge replacement, and actually that was completed. And then Mesa Grande and the I-10 rehabilitation project.
So Mesa Grande's potentially moved up to present.
Mr. Chair, that's correct, although as of right now, MPO staff has not formally had any sort of communication about the timeline or when that project might get on the tip. So watch this space, I guess. But we don't know what the project timelines are going to be. We have not received any formal communication.
Okay, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the MTPs are long-range regional transportation plans that cover a 20-year minimum planning horizon. Federal law generally requires MTPs to be updated every 5 years. The MTPs must be consistent with federal transportation law and cite applicable sections of the law. They identify the facilities that function as an integrated transportation network and emphasize those facilities that serve national and regional transportation functions. MTPs consider the 10 planning factors as they relate to the 20-year planning horizon. MTPs also describe how performance measures and performance targets are used in the MTP to assess the current transportation system. The MTPs include a system performance report evaluating the condition and performance of the transportation system with respect to the targets. The MTP incorporates strategies to improve the performance of existing transportation facilities, to relieve vehicular congestion, and maximize the safety and mobility of people and goods. The MTPs include strategies to enhance transportation and transit. MTPs incorporate a financial plan that demonstrate how the MTP can be implemented. It indicates the source of the necessary funds to carry out projects in the MTP and recommends any additional financial strategies to support public implementation. MTPs include financial strategies that are dedicated to maintaining existing infrastructure and also projected future infrastructure. The MTP examines the implementation of environmental mitigation activities. Scenario planning, while it's not required by federal law, is strongly encouraged by the FHWA and NMDOT. FTA and transit planning for the future are also covered in the MTP, and the FHWA and NMDOT encourages MPOs to address emergent issues. The currently adopted MTP for us, as Mr. Loya stated, was the Mobility 2045. It was adopted by our policy board on July 15th of 2020, and we are in the process of adopting the next one or working on the next one. We should be adopted by our policy board by June of this year. For the BPAC, BPAC is responsible for providing transportation input from a bicycle and pedestrian viewpoint to the policy board. BPAC provides a viewpoint on how regionally significant projects can affect the bicycle and pedestrian community to the policy board. The BPAC the BPAC provides community input to the Mesilla Valley MPO staff and our policy board. So the purpose of the MPO Basics book, and everyone received one when they joined our committees. The purpose of that book is to provide, a quick reference manual on MPO-related documents and materials for members of all of our committees and staff. We are happy to provide updates to the book as needed, that's it. I will now send for comments and questions.
Okay. On your list of projects or whatever, RTP was on there, but with no projects associated with it. The city has an RTP that's, I guess, in suspension or something. Is there any information on that?
It's still in limbo. And we did have a meeting with EBID about the Las Cruces Lateral Trail, I guess to name the name. And their EBID staff informed us that there is another set of problems that are pending for the implementation of that particular program. I'm probably would not be appropriate for me to elaborate on that too much at this time, okay. But the project is still experiencing difficulties.
Okay, because the city temporarily took it off of their capital improvement project, so. Okay, I guess we'll watch this space.
Watch this space, Mr. Chair, yes.
Anybody, the committee members?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Ray, I have just a quick question. For those kinds of things, we're not at liberty to say, for example, but How does that apply to the Open Meetings Act? Not that you have to say what isn't happening here, but are those meetings that happen between EBID and the city and the MPO, are they at any point open or?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Curry, no. Meetings of that nature are informational, internal, operational staff meetings and are not policy meetings. That's the difference.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, the other question I had on your list of documents that you work on, you didn't talk about the safety targets. Is that not an MPO document, or is it just like an extra work that you get to do, something that's under the UPWP, or how does that work?
Mr. Chair, it isn't listed under the UPWP, but it does not fall under the rubric of sort of that standardized list of MPO documents per se. So it's kind of that second item that you said of, this is an extra thing that you get to do, but it doesn't fall under kind of that same rubric because overall, I guess actually in a way it does, it's part of the MTP. The targets are part of the MTP, so that's kind of that heading, but it's definitely a big part of what's the recurring updates to the MTP on an annual or semi-annual basis.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have another question for Mr. Ray. I believe, my memory serves me correctly, I'm Longino Bustillos, Doña citizen for the record, that we were going to begin doing orientation for new MPO members. Has that been established, or being a new member, I kind of feel like I need a little more overview of what's happening? Or
We historically have done those on a case-by-case basis. I guess when you were appointed last year, we never circled back around because if memory serves, you had to be out of town for a while. But if you want to meet with us, we can certainly arrange a time. Just reach out to us and we'll figure something out.
Okay.
Sure. Come up to the mic, give your name, and ask your question.
Hello, Chair, committee members. My name is Andrea Olguin, and I just wondered, is there a representative from the disabled population, from our disabled citizens? Is there anyone here that speaks on behalf of people who have mobility impairment issues?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I didn't catch your
I'm
name.
Andrea Olguin.
Ms. Holguin, no, there is not a specific seat on the BPAC set aside for representatives of the disabled community.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. O'Gean, would you mind spelling your last names because it's going to be in print?
Yeah, it's Holguin.
Thank you.
But I would like to say, this is an open public meeting, so if there's anybody that ever wants to comment on those issues, we'd welcome them. Anybody else? Thank you. We're on to committee and staff comments. City of Las Cruces.
Following our meeting, I believe our presentation last meeting or maybe the one before, Parks and Rec and Public Works have been meeting to discuss advancements for trail crossings. They're going to continue to have those meetings to prioritize and find some funding opportunities for those. For the university project that's between I-25 and I-10, we're currently finalizing the preferred cross sections. We'll be having a stakeholder meeting to choose one of those with the representatives for the different entities. Excuse me. And then we'll be holding another public meeting about a month from there. So another public meeting looking at probably end of February or early March. And that's all the updates I have.
Thank you. Doña County.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Like staff already mentioned, the Elks Drive multi-use trail is already complete. I think staff went out there today with the contractor just to do like a final walkthrough, but that should already be done. last week, there was a public meeting in regards to the Shalem Colony Park. The only update that I have on that is that, I mean, there was funding set aside for that feasibility study on it, and I think also, you know, part of the meeting was to talk about the TIA that people wanted done for that park, and also to address any environmental issues. So all that was done, but now, you know, where we at right now, I think facilities and parks, they're going to take it a step further, I guess. You know, they're going to try and do a master planning effort for parks throughout the entire county, not just for Shalem Colony. So that's basically where they're at. I mean, technically there's no additional funding right now allocated for Shalem Colony Park, and any future efforts they're going to entail, you know, a master plan for the entire county, and that's basically where they're at with that.
Okay, as you look at the master plan, the Rio Grande Trail, of course, runs a large part through the entire county.
Yeah.
So I would hope that that would be one of the check boxes that you look at,
Yeah.
is how you can implement that, the Rio Grande Trail through the county.
Yeah, and once they start working on that, I'll keep you guys posted.
Okay, thank you. Town of Mesilla,
Mr. Chair, we have Sergeant Hernandez, who is a new member on the committee who represents the town of Mesilla. If you want, Sergeant.
do you have
if
any
want to come up.
updates for us from the town? Go ahead.
No, as he mentioned, I'm a new member. I'm Sergeant Lourdes Hernandez, representing with Mesilla Marshals in town of Mesilla. We don't have any updates at this time.
Okay,
Mr. Chair, Ms. Hernandez, I saw something on social media about the comprehensive plan for the town of Mesilla taking input. Do you have any information on that?
No, I do not, but I can definitely let our town mayor know.
Okay, I'll reach out to him as
Okay.
well. Thank you so much.
okay, thank you. NMSU,
Sulin Acosta for the record, no updates.
okay, NMDOT,
Mr. Chair, Andrew Guerra, NMDOT, for the record. Right now, we have just a couple ongoing projects. University Avenue is under reconstruction, so we do have detouring involved and some traffic control, so driving through there, be cautious. Also, Main Street is still underway. We still have some utilities to finish up on the westbound lane and start the paving and striping and markings on the ground. So weather permitting, hopefully we're a couple of months out. It's still a little bit of a moving target. Town of Mesilla, New Mexico 28 is complete. We have the contractors back out on site to finish some concrete work and some pavement markings, so that will soon come to a completion.
okay, so for the Main Street project, last I had heard, end of January was the completion date. That's still, that got moved in at least another month, is that what you're saying?
Based on the work still pending, they're probably still a couple of months out. They still have paving to do, and with temperatures being low right now, there's some delays there for striping and pavement markings as well. So for substantial completion, probably a couple of months out. Hopeful for the end of February, but we're not too sure yet.
Would the trail be able to be opened before the end of the project?
They are completing the bridge work right now, so they will still have to do some paving operations above that, but I can look into that and get back to you if that's something we can open up in the meantime.
Right, because the original, very first time that I heard about it, the trail was supposed to be open about a month before project completion. So if that's possible, we'll certainly encourage it.
Well, we'll keep you posted, sir.
Thank you. MPO staff updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Andrew Ray for the record. For those of you who have been with us for a while, you've probably taken note of the fact that we are only doing one public engagement cycle, or a second single public engagement cycle. That is because that when we normally would have had the public engagement for the MTP fell right when we were moving. We physically moved offices from mid-November through mid-December. We are completely moved into our new office space in the BMO building now. So that's good. However, we are still waiting for the final approval of the joint powers agreement from the state of New Mexico. It's not a surprise. Sometimes it takes a while. So I did request an update from an MDFA today, so hopefully very, very soon. And I hope to be able, although I'm not promising, I hope to be able to give a presentation to the BPAC about the ins and outs and kind of a little bit more detail about what the transition is going to mean going forward to the February meeting, but that depends on agenda load. So that's the main thing that we have to update on from a staff point of view, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I guess I did try to find you in your new office and couldn't find. Do you have signage in the building for where
We
you're
do
located?
not, and actually our guest from EBID today pointed out that we're not even listed on the building directory yet. So we are going to try to get ourselves listed there, but you've got to go down to the basement. We're in the basement of the BMO building, and then you go out the elevators to the left and then down the hallway, and then we're in Suite B 100 on your right there.
Okay, yeah, I think the lack of directory listing stymied me. Okay. And were there any follow-up items that we had?
We did not. We met so long ago, Mr. Chair, and we kind of closed the book on 2024 at that meeting. There wasn't really anything to follow up on.
Okay. Okay, and so that's all the staff comments?
That is, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we're on to committee comments. I guess something that, I was looking at the MPO website, and you have the annual safety report there. When you go to that area, you've got 2 entries, and if you click and look at the cover pages for those 2 reports, they seem to be exactly the same. So until you start scrolling past, notice that there are actually 2 different reports. One is the more detailed report, and the other is more of a summary report, I think.
We'll make sure and get that clarified, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and the other question that I had, I was looking for some of the details that was presented at the meeting with the individual fatalities. And I didn't see that in the final report. Is there something maybe to put the slides up for that or something?
No. Did we neglect to send out the PowerPoint for that? Because that was the fine-grained detail about the fatalities was not intended to be a part of the narrative of the safety report itself. That was a presentation work that was done by Ms. Provingi.
Okay, it'd be nice to have that available on the website, I guess.
Okay, we'll add that PowerPoint, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Committee members, any comments?
Mr. Chair, this is Ashley Curry for the record. Just exciting news. This has been a year and a half in the making, but we have a crossing guard at East Picatra Elementary. It's the first crossing guard that we have for the county, and it's thanks to an agreement between the police department, the county, and the school district. So that person started last Friday.
Any others down on this side?
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Longino Bustillos, Doña citizen for the record. I just have a lot of questions here. I guess, well, one comes to mind real quick because there was a cyclist hit yesterday in Albuquerque, and he's very known in the community. His name was Chuck. But I started thinking about this construction that's going on here out of Mesilla to University, and I know they've got input for redoing University. I guess I'm thinking ahead. Are the 2 speaking so that they kind of they're coordinating, they kind of meet up? I just think I see 2 different plans here. Are people talking so they kind of match up whatever is being done on both sides?
So I guess as a stakeholder on the city's university plan, which is on the east side of Main Street, that's a 15% design plan, so that's still moving forward. And I'd have asked that question, and the answer has been yes. So I think that's as best as I can, because especially at the intersection, there's certainly opportunities to properly coordinate the projects together. Does the city have any comment?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Mr. Mostillos, yes. The state does have a representative for the stakeholders there, so we're hoping that they do bring that forward. Right now, we're not in the design phase yet, but once we get there, they'll continue to have comments on those, so we'll provide those to them.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else on this side?
Mr. Chair, may I just add a comment to Mr. Bustillos? I think, I think in light of Chuck Malagodi being killed on Sunday, I think it is also just really on the forefront of our mind of we're looking at the safety targets, we're looking at what can be done, and everybody says, yeah, we've got to do this, safety targets, we've got to keep the numbers down. Yet we're doing things, for example, on the NMDOT's project on University Ave between Main Street and Highway 28 that aren't in the best interest of pedestrian and bicycle safety in making lanes wider than they maybe need to be, making them 12-foot instead of continuously 11-foot along the way. And I would just like to publicly say, I think that these are the kinds of things that the BPAC really needs to highlight and put pressure on to say we need to really truly be addressing the needs, not just bypassing saying that that was the design and that's what it is. It hasn't been painted. It has the tarmac hasn't even been laid yet. And I feel like these are the opportunities that we have as a state to actually do something.
So maybe we could put on our follow-up list input response from NMDOT on the 11-foot lane through the entire project. Because we've brought that up continuously, and there's a Johns Hopkins study that says narrower lanes are safer. NMDOT has their Target Zero program. It seems like that should all come together. And I see this as a gap where it's not coming together.
We'll request an update at the next BPAC meeting from NMDOT, Mr. Chair.
Any committee comments?
Mr. Chair, Jim Wilcox for the record. In light of the recent fatality from a cyclist, I brought to the City Council's attention today during the public meeting opportunity to point out that in the last 4 years, we've only had 1 year of a active transportation coordinator, and part of that person's job is to help educate cyclists and pedestrians on safety, make motorists more aware of pedestrians and cyclists, and advise on some design criteria that would make the engineering of roads more safe. So we've had, since I have been here in 4 years, and I know it goes back further, it's been 2 years now since we last had somebody. So I pointed out that we're not even posting that position. It still remains vacant. And while I can't draw a direct correlation between that person not being in the position and the death that we recently saw, it does leave us open to vulnerability. And I think that if we talk about erring on the side of caution, I think we really need to get that position filled. Thank you.
So I did stay to the end of the city council meeting, and you should watch the video for the city manager's comments at the end, because he did address that. Anybody else? Okay, so we have another opportunity for public comment. If anybody from the public wants to make any statements? Seeing none, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Jim Wilcox, second.
Without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you.